The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Charles and Dom. My name is producer Lachlan and I will be bringing you another replay episode today. This time from the vault of War Stories, that series we did in the summer of 2022, 2.5 whole years ago of the Chaser Report. Oh boy, we do this thing every single day. And by we, I mean me, because I'm the only one here right now. Now, I've always thought of myself as a fan of The Chaser before I am an employee at it, and that's mostly for tax purposes, so I was particularly fascinated when I first got to put together this episode featuring Charles, Dom, and Chris Taylor, where they talk about how not all of the stunts that we saw on TV were legitimately pulled off, including Chris's famous stocking head stunt or his appearance on Sunrise. Even the infamous Make a Realistic Wish Foundation sketch gets brought up, and you hear about the story about how that got put on air and the aftermath to it, which, if you're a long-term Chaser fan, you know what happened. If you haven't listened to War Stories, make sure you go back and revisit those episodes. They're an absolute treasure trove, definitely well worth listening to. And if you're not sold on that, then you will be after this.
Chris Taylor is at the microphone today once again. Hello, Chris.
Hello, how are you guys?
All right.
That was the most tepid response.
I had to think about it.
I was just making small talk. I didn't care how you are. I was literally just dumped through to me. What am I meant to say?
I just had to. I just pondered and I thought, well, no, we're not. The great thing about this series is we're looking back at the past when there was no COVID and no Omicron and no ICU rates soaring. So
we're not talking about how am I. I'm terrible, but that's not about what this podcast is about.
Let's talk about what we used to be.
I didn't actually have any interest in your health. I was just making a pleasantry. You just meant to say, oh, I'm all right. Now, we're talking today about, like...
Well, I did eventually.
We're broken men.
Now I feel I am interested in your health. Because by your response, I'm wondering if something's seriously wrong and you've got 4 hours to live.
Yes, probably.
The Chaser Report. Less news, less often.
Now, Chris, can I throw something at you here, which is that we talked last time about where can you take a horse, but on that same strip of shops near the ABC was one of your most famous stunts, because you didn't do that many, but some of the ones you did were very memorable, and I want to talk about, because Chaz already raised it, the stocking heads incident, because that was one of the most extraordinary things that we did in terms of the TV impact. People really talked about that. So, Chris, there was a bit of a debate in the team, I remember, about whether everything that happened on the show should have been exactly how it was presented, as real as it presented. But some of your most memorable moments, and the Sunrise clip, which was absolutely brilliant, and Stocking Heads were things where there was a little bit of setup. And when you think about it, it would make sense that it would have to have been set up. But I remember you saying, look, it's a comedy show. What matters is that it's a funny premise. And I think you won that debate in the fullness of time.
Well,
what's your recollection of all that conversation now?
I'm very aware how disappointed everyone always was with that Sunrise one, which is where I divorced my wife live on air on Sunrise with Koshi.
Well, Chris, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
Say hello to the boys for us.
Especially so early. Thanks for coming in.
No, my pleasure.
Early.
And can I just do one thing before we go?
Sure.
We go out live here, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah. My partner, Jo, never misses the show at all.
That's nice.
She absolutely loves it. And I just know she'll be watching today. So can I just put a message out to her?
Go on.
We've been together for 7 years. And I just want to take this opportunity now live on TV to say, Jo, get the fuck out of my life.
You sure yet? Have you texted her about it?
I've tried. I've done everything I can, Koshi. So if you don't get the fucking message now, Jo, you never will.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's 90 minutes. 9 o'clock.
First of all, I wasn't married at the time, so Jo does not exist. But even me pretending to divorce Jo live on Sunrise didn't actually go out live on Sunrise. It was filmed with the cooperation of the show. They didn't know what I was going to say, so it's sort of an improvised moment. But they knew it was off air, and they played along quite well. But it was presented as live, I guess. I understand why people are disappointed when they learn that didn't really happen, because for them the excitement of that clip is the the audaciousness, because I swear on Channel 7. I seem to have tricked commercial TV into being a guinea pig in my piece. But for me, none of that was really integral to the laugh. It was just a comedy idea. It was based on that notion about public proposals, where people often, at baseball games propose to their wife, or the people hang up banners on highways. And it was an opposite sketch where I did all of those things, but I did it for wanting to ask for a divorce instead of a marriage. So for me, that worked as a comedic idea. It didn't matter if it was real or not. And I still believe that. I still think if you had the knowledge that it was all just like traditional sketch show, but shot using, famous people like Kochie and Mel, I think you'd still get a laugh. But the problem with, by that stage, The Chaser, because most of what we did was real, it became very ambiguous about what stunts were real and what were kind of manipulated a bit. And I guess, as Dom said, this did become a source of some tension in the group, because there were those of us that just thought if it's comedically strong, it doesn't matter. We're just making a comedy show. And the same way that every sketch show before us has, manipulated actors and stuff to make their scripts sing, we were doing the same. But because there was the ambiguity that, 50% of what we did was genuine interactions with real people, then it got grey about what were the ones that sort of sat in between. We had a word for them.
And did it dilute? Isn't the point that it sort of dilutes the impact of the real ones?
Yeah.
If you've got these fake ones mixed in, and suddenly it sort of feels like, oh, is it all staged?
I think that was the thing. Like, I remember Chaz being, Chaz being Chaz.
Yes.
As regular listeners to this podcast will know, he had a lot of views about this and a lot of theories and sort of understood where I was coming from, but also was probably very careful about protecting the show's integrity.
Yes.
Because,
integrity.
Because if word sort of gets out that something like the Sunrise thing is fake, then maybe is APEC faked?
Yeah,
Or is,
yeah.
And the answer to that is no. We draw an internal line. That one is a soft comedy sketch about, a play on public proposals. The other is a genuine gotcha about an over-the-top security operation in Sydney.
Because my thing was always, there's a playfulness in the uncertainty anyway, like playing with whether things are sort of true or not is part of a satirist's toolbox, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also, there is no such thing as real with The Chaser, because when you go out on a stunt, the thing that the viewer sees is you very bravely walking up to someone by yourself. They don't see the producers, the multiple cameras, the soundo,
the safety officer.
It's much less brave than it looks at every point in the entire series. So I don't know what real even means in the context of this, but it's certainly true that at the time, I think I was like, I don't really want us to overuse that. But my view was, if you think about it, you have to realise it couldn't possibly be real.
Yeah, and that I guess brings us to the stocking head one, which, there's no way on earth any lawyer, but especially a cautious ABC lawyer, would let you go out dressed as a robber and enter shops. That's just a public terrorism, basically.
It's a crime.
It's a crime. It probably is a crime to impersonate a robber. Even if you're not robbing, you're still terrorising the bejesus out of someone.
But it's also incredibly dangerous because
for both parties.
Yeah.
If someone draws a gun on me, it's dangerous. So I think maybe I naively thought everyone would again understand that this was more a flight of fancy that are shot under controlled conditions. But
shall we have a listen?
Let's have a listen.
Hey there, just the paper and some chewy, thanks.
Can you take off your mask?
Oh, no, it's okay. It's fine. It's just cold outside and I don't think it's
Not really.
Hi there. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Hi there. Do you have the new, that Peking to Paris book? Excuse me. No, I just want to book a holiday. No, it's fine. Can't I book a holiday here? Hi there. Fine. No, I just want to...
Get out. Sorry.
No, I just want to...
You are a robber.
No, I just want to... I just want to get some noodles.
Sorry.
I just want some dumplings. No. Hi there. I noticed a DVD.
Well, what the hell is that?
No, the DVD in the window. Is that the final price you can offer? No, don't panic. No, I just want to buy a DVD.
Give me a second. I'll call the police.
No, it's fine. No. It's just what I wear.
Oh, can you help me, please? I've got a gentleman here.
Don't call the police. I'm a regular shopper.
Stop. You're getting myself. Can you come straight away, please?
Get it out of here.
Okay.
The cops are coming.
It's just a funny premise. What if I wore a stocking over my head as a fashion statement?
But I reckon the reactions of some of those people were really funny. Like, because you didn't actually tell them exactly what was going to happen, did you?
No, I think in this case we more or less did and had to legally. You always want as genuine a response as you can get within the law and within safety protocols. So it was sort of a shoot in two halves. The first half we tried to minimise the information and maximise genuine responses. So the crew would always go into the shop ahead of me, like a fixer or a producer. I think it was Nathan Earl on this one who did a lot of our producing and was a real gun and a real asset on this show.
A real smooth talker for this.
He was. And he'd just say, look, we're shooting a TV show. Someone's going to come in. I won't tell you, much more than that, but just react as you would react. And that got us somewhere, I think. So the first couple of bites in that piece are probably those ones. Then I think it became clear to us that comedically the responses needed to be bigger.
Yes.
And so we did. We just literally coached the responses and just treated this as a sketch.
Because it's very well performed. Like, you're a robber. Like, they look really fearful. Like,
you don't want it to look too real because then people will just think we're assholes, that we've gone around trying to scare people. I'm trying to remember.
No, but it was the perfect balance between, like, they weren't petrified and sort of thing, but they were treating it seriously.
They're
like
assertive.
they were a straight man. In the sketch.
Yeah, and look, it is funny, but again, like the Sunrise,
it's hilarious.
Like the Sunrise one, whenever, and I'm always very comfortable telling people, that we a lot of it was staged, because I think ethically that's fine to confess how you make your comedy, but also I just think it looks so bad if you did that. For real.
With this one, definitely.
I'd rather be known as someone who slightly manipulates comedy than known as someone who goes around terrorising innocent shopkeepers. So, but the fans' response was so disappointing always.
What was it?
Well, they always just thought, I only liked that piece because I thought you were actually a cunt.
Yeah.
The Chaser Report. News you know you can't trust.
Didn't it also, this is not something I thought at the time, but doesn't it also fuck with the premise in hindsight that of the Chaser, that we always do things for real? And so then we mess with, in our tradition of messing with everything, we mess with our own reputation.
Yeah, look, well, it's very meta, but there was a bit of that going on. And I remember, I think everyone laughed at me. I always tried to justify this piece editorially before we get into the ethics of the shoot. I sort of think it's a piece about judgment based on appearance, like, which does happen in society. If people with disabilities or people of different ethnicity, different looks get different responses. And it was about stereotypes. And I thought that if you take a ridiculous stereotype, like the stereotype of the robber, but what if someone just looked like that but wasn't a robber?
It wasn't.
Like, what a terrible way to live. Yeah, if that was a fashion choice, but everywhere he went, he got judged based on his appearance. That was sort of there was something kind of like that going on in my head that I was keen to explore. I don't think that comes across necessarily in the piece, but that was the premise going in. Then it just became, unfortunately perhaps, or fortunately, depending on how sick your sense of humour is, a piece about scaring the bejesus out of people. But it's... I guess because no one gets hurt, obviously, because it was shot in controlled conditions. Like, I'm just wondering what people who thought that was real actually, what they're finding amusing about that, other than the assholery of it.
It is perverse when you think about it, isn't it? That you wouldn't. Surely you don't have to think for more than a few seconds if you actually If you think about the way that the show is made, you realise that we couldn't possibly have been allowed to do that for real.
Yeah, I guess people didn't know because I think we've mentioned this in previous podcasts in this series that there was a pretty young audience. And
Often,
kids are impressionable and they want to believe that, the Chaser were sort of adult avatars of their own disobedience and anti-authority and all of that. There was a bit of that going on. It was
Totally.
we hate the word, but it was a cheeky sort of naughty show. And I think they thought, and in a way, I don't know how much you follow sort of what's happening in this space these days on YouTube, but people do go around shooting this kind of stuff for real. Well, or maybe it's not for real and I'm getting hoodwinked, but like people, the currency of clicks and views is so high that you need to do something outrageous to get views these days. Now, we didn't have that pressure back then. As I said in another podcast, YouTube had either just begun or it wasn't a big platform for us. ABC was our audience.
No, there was almost no YouTube for whatever reason.
No, it was just starting. And ABC had a policy of pulling down ABC shows because they, back... And in fact, The Chaser was one of the first...
See them.
In fact, we were the first show that begged the ABC to keep ours up. Because people forget, when Chasers War and everything began, it was like 10:30 on Friday nights. It wasn't primetime Wednesday. It was very off-Broadway. The only thing that made the show popular was some of these stunt clips started leaking on YouTube, and we had to beg the ABC to keep them up there because we realised that's where the marketing was. That was the best ad we could possibly have for the show. But otherwise, they wanted to take them all down. Anyway, that's a long tangent of way of saying we didn't have the expectation or the need to do shock content. And I always get a bit upset, as I think all of us do, when you saw the show described as deliberately shocking and that we take delight in outrage and all of that. We really genuinely did just want to make a comedy show and stuff it with as many jokes and laughs and different comedic sensibilities as possible. I don't think anyone ever really attended a writers' meeting saying, I want to cause an outrage this week.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think any comedian
and we tried
does.
to avoid it
No.
because it's there's nothing good about outraging people.
It just puts a handbrake on production. It's a big distraction to deal with.
I can't help but remember, Chris, with all this discussion about what's real and what isn't, that I think with the Make-A-Wish situation, with the big controversy that came in this series, part of the problem with that was that they thought it was done for real, that they thought that our teams had gone into an actual children's ward.
Yes. No,
and offered them a stick, whereas in fact, of course, it was set up with
Actors.
young actors.
I only learnt this
of course
recently
we would
too.
never, and yet because people thought, oh, well, they always do things for real, they thought we'd bravely or horribly wanted to do a children's ward and started, picking on kids.
Yeah, no, I didn't realise that at the time. I thought there were just genuine editorial concerns about, the comedy of that piece. But yeah, there was a show on the ABC recently called Reputation Rehab that did something of a deep dive into outrage comedy and with a case study on that sketch. And they got a focus group of people who hadn't seen it back in the day. They hadn't heard of The Chaser or anything. And yeah, for a start...
Well, they played the whole episode.
They had to play the whole...
They played the whole episode and they asked the panel to guess which sketch was the one that caused huge controversy, and no one...
They went through at least six others before they arrived at the Make-A-Wish one.
Well,
and there are at least six other...
We thought the Oscar bait sketch was if anything was going to destroy us. It was one where Andrew gets all my left foot was one that was going to cause trouble. So we couldn't, even if we'd wanted to outrage people, we had no idea what the reaction was going to be.
No.
And the audience, 400 people watched that or something like that in the studio, and none of them came out saying, oh, I think that one was a bit spicy.
No, and look, so these things are hard to predict, and but I think the point I was making was also in that Reputation Rehab show, in addition to none of the focus group guessing what was the controversial sketch, once they were asked to address it, they all assumed they were real patients, which does make it
really
obviously makes it ickier. And but the minute they knew it was actors, they go, oh, well, that's just a black comedy sketch.
Yeah.
So I guess in hindsight, people thinking it was real or didn't worked for us, and sometimes it worked against us, Chris.
I think so. And look, as anyone who works in comedy knows, that these things are incredibly subjective, and one person's view is another person's exact opposite view. And it's always... well, it's always impossible to make a show that's universally loved. But I think the beauty of a show like The Chasers Bar and everything was it did represent a pretty broad range of senses of humour because the team members had quite different senses of humour. It was amazing how unified the show was, given how different we were in our sensibilities. I think we all come from reasonably similar backgrounds, but it was, there were the diehard satirists, and then there were those of us that preferred doing silly dress-ups and wearing fake moustaches and doing voices. And I think, people like Andrew and I, when asked to do stunts, look for a way to bring our love of sketch into stunt world rather than just slavishly sort of doing the Craig or Julian chasing Johnny Howard type pieces. So it's it's interesting to talk about because I've sort of watched a lot of so-called guerrilla comedy or real world comedy recently, and there's some excellent. Well, I think Nathan For You is, I think, the best show in this space. But even when I watch that, having made a show like The Chaser, I can spot little instances, not many in his case, but there are instances where you can see the hand of the producer just manipulate things a little to get a desired comic effect. And it's fine. I'm completely fine with it. It's no different to manipulating drama. It's just, you do what you do to maximise your laugh. But with
we edit. That's the other thing. If you watch the rushes of some of these stunts, you wouldn't find them funny at all, or at least very occasionally, because we made the show funny in the edit in many cases, didn't we?
Oh, completely. And, half the cutaways in The Chaser are of people that aren't responding to the theme they look to be responding to. They are in the same location. They're not taken from an entirely different shoot, but they're sandwiched into an edit to create a more pleasing and funny sequence. And that's the business of making TV. And as we've sort of canvassed, we'd made a rod for our back by presenting a lot of the stuff for real because it was for real. But then it just becomes a little bit grayer when it comes to those bits that were just pure comedy pieces rather than pure stunts.
Well, Chris, next time we chat to you, it will be with Craig Rucastle as well. We'll catch you then.
See you then.